for you. An aircraft has crashed while performing at the Avalon Air Show.
Good night, Malaysian 370. That was the last anyone ever heard from MH370 before it vanished into nothing. No crash site, no mayday, just a silence that still haunts the world a decade later. And it's not the only time a flight ended with a voice hanging in the air like a ghost. Another pilot screamed, "Get out of it!" seconds before the metal met Earth. These weren't lines from a film. They were real, recorded, and final. In this story, we're walking straight into the final words, the last cries for help, the moments when even the strongest voices break. Some messages are desperate, some eerily calm, and some never came at all. Ready to hear what was said in the last seconds before everything went dark? Let's start with the Air France 447 incident. Air France Flight 447 was supposed to be just another overnight trip from Rio to Paris. It took off on June 1st, 2009, with 228 people on board, passengers sleeping, crew working through the motions, and a storm building quietly in the dark skies ahead. No one knew it would become one of the worst and most mysterious aviation disasters in modern history. The plane simply disappeared over the Atlantic. For nearly 2 years, the world had no answers for it, just silence. But when the wreckage was finally found nearly 3 kilometers below the ocean surface, so were the black boxes. And what they revealed wasn't just technical failure, it was something far more chilling, pure human confusion, unfolding in real time. The problem started when ice crystals blocked the plane's pitot tubes, the sensors that tell pilots how fast they're flying. Without accurate speed data, the autopilot shut off, leaving the crew to fly manually in the middle of a storm, in total darkness. First Officer Bonin, the one actually flying the plane at the time, kept pulling the nose up, something you're not supposed to do in a stall. The alarms were screaming, the instruments weren't making sense, and no one could figure out what was real. Over and over, Bonin kept asking, "What's happening?" You can hear the panic rising. Then came another voice. We're going to crash. It's not true, but what's happening?" That was the other pilot, David Robert, caught between denial and dread. Captain Dubois, rushing back into the cockpit, tried to help. Pitch attitude, 10 degrees of pitch. But by then, it was too late. They were already falling. The final seconds aren't full of heroics or clarity, just desperate voices trying to make sense of a plane that was quietly falling out of the sky, and a truth no one wanted to believe. On number 2 comes the National Airlines Flight 102. That's scary. Turns into a nightmare. April 29th, 2013, a routine military cargo run, a Boeing 747 lifting off from Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan, heading for Dubai. On board were 7 experienced crew members and a load of 5 armored MRAP vehicles, each weighing up to 18 tons. The kind of cargo that doesn't just sit still if something goes wrong, and sadly, something did. The crash itself is brutal to watch. A dash cam caught the entire thing. The plane climbs unnaturally steep right after takeoff, pauses in midair like it's holding its breath, then plummets straight down. It explodes into a massive fireball at the end of the runway. No one survived, and the saddest part? The crew knew something was off. You can actually hear it in the cockpit recording. Just before takeoff, the loadmaster casually mentioned that one of the straps holding a vehicle had busted. Instead of hitting the brakes, the crew tried to stay optimistic. The captain asked, "I hope, rather than just replacing that strap, I hope he's beefing the straps up more?" A few minutes later, the loadmaster reported that the vehicles had shifted a couple inches. That's when the captain responded with the line that sticks with everyone. "That's scary. Without a lock. Man, I don't like that." And then they rolled down the runway anyway. When the plane took off, those MRAPs broke loose, crashed through the bulkhead, and shattered the rear flight control systems. The nose pitched up far too high, and with no stabilizers left to bring it down, the plane stalled and fell out of the sky. There was heartbreak in those final words. They saw the danger coming, said it out loud, and still couldn't stop what happened next. Next comes the Polish Airlines Flight 5055. Good night, goodbye, we're dying. Polish Airlines Flight 5055 left Warsaw on the morning of May 9th, 1987. It was supposed to reach New York, carrying 183 people on board. Less than an hour into the flight, though, everything started falling apart. The aircraft, a Soviet-built Ilyushin Il-62M, suffered a catastrophic engine failure due to faulty bearings. Metal debris tore through the inside of the plane, causing a fire that disabled key control systems. The pilots tried to make an emergency landing, but they couldn't control the aircraft. It crashed into the Kabadi Woods just outside the city, killing everyone on board. The black box recordings are filled with tension, chaos, and pure horror. There were voices shouting about fire. Passengers screamed while the cockpit was filled with confusion as the crew tried to maintain altitude and keep the plane stable. But the most haunting part came near the end. Among the panic, someone could be heard speaking softly, almost like whispering to themselves. They said, "Good night, goodbye, we're dying." Not shouted, not screamed, just spoken like someone who'd already accepted what was coming. It felt like a goodbye meant for the world, a last message that somehow made it out before silence took over. On number 4 is the American Airlines Flight 587, Get Out of It. It was November 12, 2001. Only 2 months after 9/11, emotions across the country were still raw. American Airlines. Flight 587 was heading out to the Dominican Republic, packed with families and travelers excited to get home. It took off like normal, but just 3 minutes in, everything came undone. Fast. The plane hit wake turbulence from a Japan Airlines 747 that had taken off a minute before them. Nothing unusual about that. It happens all the time. But the first officer, Sten Molen, responded too aggressively. He kept pushing the rudder left and right, trying to fight it. The rudder system on the Airbus A300 wasn't built to handle those rapid side-to-side moves. With each input, more pressure built on the tail, until the vertical stabilizer just tore clean off. The cockpit recording is pure chaos in those last seconds. You could hear the first officer saying, "What the hell are we into? We're stuck in it." He didn't know what was happening, only that the plane wasn't responding. Then the captain shouted, "Get out of it! Get out of it!" His voice cracked with desperation. He was trying to get the plane back into control, but it was already too late. Moments later, Flight 587 slammed into the Bell Harbor neighborhood of Queens, killing 260 people on board and 5 more on the ground. And this one is the strangest ever. On number 5 is MH370, the vanishing that still echoes. March 8, 2014. Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, heading to Beijing. There were 239 people aboard. The flight was cruising at 35,000 feet when just 38 minutes in, it disappeared. Not in a slow, obvious way. Just gone. Off radar, off radio, off the map. And to this day, no one really knows what happened. The last official words from the cockpit came at 1:19 a.m. Malaysian time. The captain said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. It was calm, polite, and completely normal. That message was supposed to be the handover from Malaysian air traffic control to Vietnamese control. But after that, not a single word. The transponder went silent. The radar contact vanished. Every trace of the aircraft was gone. For weeks, then months, then years, the world searched. All that's ever been found were a few pieces of debris scattered across distant beaches, just fragments of a plane, not answers. But wait, then came the theories. One of the strangest? A Twitter user claimed to receive a coded voicemail in 2018 that said, "Danger, SOS. It is dire for you to evacuate. They are not human." People speculated about alien abductions and secret weapons, but it was all debunked thinking to be just another internet hoax feeding on the silence. And lastly, there's AirAsia Flight 8501. Pull down slowly. AirAsia Flight 8501 was flying from Indonesia to Singapore on December 28, 2014, when it vanished over the Java Sea. All 162 people on board were killed, making it one of Indonesia's deadliest air disasters. And while the crash wasn't instant, the chain of events that caused it unfolded in just a few tense minutes. At the center of it all was a rudder malfunction. When the issue started, the captain tried to reset the flight computers. It wasn't the right move. In that brief reset window, the plane stalled and started a steep, deadly descent. The cockpit voice recorder tells a chilling story of alarms blaring and confusion between the two pilots. One of the last things you hear is a voice repeating, pull down, slowly, slowly." It's desperate, rushed, and full of uncertainty. They were trying to fix it in real time, but the plane kept dropping. It crashed into the sea before they had any chance to recover. It's those repeated words, slowly, slowly, that stay with you. They were doing everything they could to fight the fall, but the ground still came too fast. Which of these final messages stayed with you the most? These weren't scripted, they were real people's last words. And if these voices moved you like they did us, hit like and subscribe for more true stories that never fade. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.